And we're not going to start with the intro because it's a mouthful. You guys know what podcast this is. The Performance Playbook, blah, 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 blah. Welcome to the podcast. We got Hayden Mitchell here, round 2. My brother, how we doing?
Doing great, man. Doing fantastic today.
Let's go. Let's go.
Yeah.
So we were just chatting before we clicked the ready go button, but you are on the move right now and kind of maybe redefining what the Wayfinder programming and your company looks like.
Yeah.
Why don't you walk us through what that process is and what's going on?
Yeah, I talk about it's like where play meets performance and then building like the soulful savage, right? And so like philosophically with the physical domain is, you know, move fast, lift heavy, right? But there's so much more to that and this like exploration and play. Whenever I kind of first started a few years back, like trying to figure out what does the online space look like or how do I want to speak. And, you look at like a Max Schmarzo or, everybody's like everyday athlete. I'm the everyday athlete. It's like most people are not. They're not capable of being good athletes. I love them so much, but like everyone's capable of exploration. Everyone's capable of play. There's a lot of seekers. There's a lot of people that are in the process of becoming that know they'll never arrive. And the athletes are going to find me. Like they're going to want to train with me, but I don't know how to like talk to that. It's so contextual, but everybody is interested in a little bit of adventure and finding out what they're truly capable of. And so, yeah, the Wayfinder journey it's difficult in terms of like creating a tagline or some sort of 7-second clip to disseminate that knowledge, man. Like my journey has been one of a lot of trauma related stuff. There's a lot of darkness there. And I used to use training as an escape. Now it's a practice. I don't try to escape it. I don't use movement as an escape. It's just a beautiful part of my day, but it's just one part of it. And I found like I was just overly interested in the training side of things and I wasn't feeding the rest of me,
Yeah.
I think that's where a lot of people get. They want what I've got. They'll be like, I want that savage training. It's like, yeah, but there's so much that goes into that and you're going to break if you're not like ready.
I like how you touch on that. And I think maybe that's why I instantaneously connected with you. And maybe that's like your content is so different. And I think I love that so much. And if people saw like we message each other back and forth, or I'll be like, dude, I love this video. This is sick. And it speaks to me because I feel like I went through that same process in the athletic space. So it's like I went through the grinding, push all these feelings down, just quiet, let me hide that. Let me feel like this constant anxiety. And then, at one point it finally clicked for me to where it's like, hey, me becoming a better person, me becoming a all-around athlete, a very well-rounded person played into my athletics. It played into my life. And then funny enough, if I looked at athletics as more of a spiritual journey of learning about myself, I walked into practices more relaxed. I enjoyed it. Even if I had a bad practice, I can be mad in the moment. Like I'm not afraid of anger, but anger in a healthy way. Okay, I'm a little upset right now. Let's dissect that and then let's move forward, because again, it's like no one's going to be able to like never be pissed off or never be, I have to be happy 24/7. Like get the fuck out of here. Go back to your like fairyland. That's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
But like actually understanding and listening to yourself. And so even on the mental side of athletics, of being a super high performer, we were just talking about this beforehand. Like I've been walking into practices with my shoulders a little bit lower. I'm a little bit more relaxed. I've noticed I'm even more explosive because I can do the things I want to do on 10 meter a lot more tactically because I'm more relaxed. And so I feel like I connected with your content because I can watch people and I could watch coaches just lift 24/7 but there's no personality. I'm like, ugh, you know, you see so much of it. And then I watch your content and you're like, I've been broken up with. I've gone through all these dark times. And I'm
Yeah.
like, this is my guy. Like, I've been there. And a lot of people have been there. It's just, you know, like, you got to keep posting the message because it's not as sexy right off the bat. But if someone's willing to pause and listen to what you have to say, it's like, I'm sitting there, I feel like I'm reading a book. I'm like, yeah, this is good. Like, it's been very good. And again, beforehand, we were even just talking about you doing more long form content. And I'm excited for that because, you know, I'll watch your YouTube videos. I'm like, finally, you know, I feel like he can fully express an idea out.
Yeah.
But yeah, walk me through maybe how you ran into this spiritual side, or not even the spiritual side because I'm making this fluffy, but however you would, the soulful side, the soulful savage side of your training.
I think for me, like it's always probably been there, you know, in a sense where trace it back, it's like I was always in touch with some sort of rhythm in a sense. Like, and I think a lot of times I was trying to escape the noise of my household. And so, and I think I was always trying to kind of find like a different layer of like consciousness even as a kid. And sort of like I'd play basketball outside and sort of dance with the ball and I'd play like beats with the ball. And, you know, it sort of transcended just basketball. But it really, I mean, through my 20s, man, I went through a lot. I was divorced at 30. I taught in the inner cities, man. I saw a lot of death. You know, first girl I fell in love with killed herself, and I got divorced like a week later or week before. And it was a lot, man. And I was preyed upon by a neurologist when I was younger after concussions, and he got me hooked on a lot of pills, man. And I realized I was in trouble, but I had no skills. I didn't know my mind. I didn't really know what it was capable of thinking. You know, my athletes and my students, like you know, I'm a beloved teacher and coach, but I don't even know what I taught. I don't even know what I said. And I broke. I broke at 30. I ended up in a psych ward for suicidal ideations, and then I was in rehab. I didn't need to go to rehab, dude. I needed to go there to save my soul. And it was really in there, man, where I realized like everybody in there, save for a couple people that were so far gone, wanted to be loved, give love, do good, have people see them doing good. And in the psych ward, the same thing. And there's some wild people in there that think squirrels are on their shoulders, you know? So it's like, but there's this beauty in that. And it took me a long time. I'm still learning lessons from that. And that was 8 years ago, man. And I realized in there that I was disconnected from the digital space. And I was in nature all the time. And there was a teacher in there. And this is where Nick Saban sends his Alabama football players. Back when he was a coach, he'd send them to this guy. And he knew my soul like right away. He's like, you're scared of just going for it, man. It's like, what? He's like, there's something inside of you, man. It's got to be released, but you've got to tap into the source. And he kind of just walked me through it in this really natural way. And yeah, I mean, ever since then, I'd read books like The Spirituality of Imperfection and just always trying to like search for, you know, little solutions here and there and gain skills within and outside of religion. And, you know, so it initially was like an escape with movement, and slowly it sort of evolved into an actual soulful and savage movement practice through the years. I think I've only really found it truly in the last year.
Yeah. Yeah. I think being able to watch that again, it's like, I watch that in the videos that you post. Like there's just so much of you. And this was one of the ideas I wanted to tap on. I was going to tap on it later, but we could just kind of right into that. But it's like, as a coach, right, you have in this big social media space, you have so much, I don't want to say fake, but you're presenting, right, which is kind of social media. You're presenting your best self. But I feel like with you, you've been able to go, hey, like I've failed before and I've fallen on my face. And then you bring up concepts again that I wanted to talk about, like physically healing, let that be from the soul or literally from a physical, again, a physical injury or whatever. But you talk about it so deeply. Like when you talk, when I, at least what from me, from my perspective, every time I see a video from yours, I feel like I'm getting to know each layer of who you are. And it's just so open. And I don't know if I'm just like overly stroking here, but like I just personally,
There's a lot of people that reach out and say stuff to me,
yeah,
like, thank you so much. It happened a lot this week.
yeah,
It's like, thank you so much. I got a bunch of voice texts from I won't say her name because she wants us to be quiet. It's pretty big person in the space, and just how much it resonated.
yeah,
With her being able to talk about that recent reel where I was like, 7 weeks after a breakup, and here's me trying to figure it out.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And I deeply connect with that too, because I ran into a similar situation that just kind of like flipped my life on my head. And it was very, to me and to what I tell people, I have a good friend here, and he even said this line that like stuck with me. He was like, every young man needs to be broken up with at least once.
Yeah.
Because it's so important to recognize it's like, hey, you suck. Not in a bad way, but like you can be you can be a lot better. And what you are now is just surface level. It's low. And I recognized, I was like, I only gave a shit about myself. Everyone else was just like, if it wasn't benefiting me, get the fuck out of my way. You're useless. And that's how I was running my relationship. And that burned and crashed in my face, which it should have. Like it was so helpful, it was so good. And then you regress and look at things. And so when you posted that, I was like, oh, again, just like straight to the chest.
Yeah.
So I guess the idea, or maybe the question from that was, you go through these hard times, you go through the psych ward, you go to, like AA, and you try to like learn, or rehab, I guess it's not AA, unless those are kind of intertwined.
Actually, I'll tell your audience, if you want free therapy, go to AA.
Okay.
It's the
Yeah.
greatest place in the. If you're, and then I'll let you ask the question. It's like there's old timers in there, man. I remember my first tattoo. Guy was doing it, says "Never give up" because I wanted to, and that took on a lot deeper meaning. I saw it on a meth head's hand. Never give up tattooed there. I was like, man, you say that all the time, but it really means something now. And
Yeah.
yeah, man, it. I think that old timers have so many great stories to tell. And one that really stood out to me was one man just talking about getting pissed at his lawnmower and sort of just like going, what in the fuck is wrong with me? I am angry with a lawnmower.
Yeah.
I just need to put some oil in. It's just like, this is the whole way he told the story, and they were such great storytellers about their lives, and that had a huge impact on me. Where it was just like fully opening up, to perfect strangers, and they became this like family over time. I love that.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Well, I guess the question, even based off of that, it's like, I forgot who I heard this from too, but it's like, it's so hard to really like digest advice from someone that hasn't eaten shit, because like they can, they can throw out all of these things and maybe they read in a book, but like until you do it, and I'm not even saying that I've really eaten shit. I've gotten broken up with, which is the most frou-frou thing in the world, because it just shocked my ego. Like that was kind of the big thing. But like,
Yeah.
being able to go through those hard times, do you think you've been able to, and again, even on the social media space, that's hard to open up like that. Do you feel like you've been able to connect with your clients, and even like on the student side when you were a professor or, working through that PhD, like you could really help a lot of people? Do you feel like you've been able to start to build on that?
Yeah, man. I mean, that's probably my greatest gift in some ways. You ask, it's like I think I recently said, it's like, you can't ask for wisdom and not expect a lot of shit to be thrown your way. And
Yeah.
I mean, I've lost a lot of people, man. My tattoos are from deaths of cousins that were like brothers to me, and one of them world famous drummer of the Foo Fighters, right? And it's like, I've been through a lot, I've seen a lot, and I've lost young people too to murder. And yeah, it helped me deeply connect with everyone, and not just like young people. It's everyone. It spans decades. But there's a semester at the University of Alabama where I had, I believe, 77 students, and almost a third of them told me they were suicidal. Right? It's like, they obviously, I had talked about it, and I had opened up that door to where they could connect with me on that level. Now, this is kind of post-COVID. These kids were just like messed up, man.
Yeah.
They're all in a classroom and don't know how to talk, you know? And so, yeah, I was able to break down some barriers there. Shit, we ended up role playing, getting like STDs with a couple boys that like played out different scenarios. When we did that, man, it opened up like all of this new conversation. And, that's the thing. It's being able to truly deeply connect with somebody at a soulful level. Now, how to disseminate that in a social media space, like, hey, I'm pretty cool. I connect with you at your deepest level and help you find your truest self. It's like, people have heard that so many times, man. Because there's a lot, as you said, there's a lot of charlatans out there that act like they know, and they're just regurgitating something they've heard from somebody else, man. A lot of people haven't been through darkness and claim they have. There's a lot of fake philosophers out there, and it's tough to sift through, you know?
Yeah. Then
really tough.
What would be some of those consistent factors that you've seen maybe yourself or within those groups that you've kind of pulled out of the valleys, we'll call it? But, how do people get themselves out of that rut? How did you get out of that, that valley for yourself, especially coming out of the ward or even the AA meetings that you're utilizing? What was like a key factor that helped people pull out of that low point?
Yeah, I think there's some very critical factors. It's community. You have to chase community. You have to. Again, like I said, even if you are not addicted to anything, there are AA meetings, and you don't have to say, you're just like, I'm an addict. But there's a community there. That's what CrossFit does well too, right? They create a community. You've got to find a way to find a community. And I think, ultimately what you're trying to find within that is like the ability to open up and express yourself, and that people are like, there are a lot of people out there that are willing to listen, and truly support you. Now, you don't want to always like play that role of like, I'm a martyr, I'm a victim, and wear that as your personality. But initially, you've got to find that support. For me, it's been finding mentors and allowing them into my life, and looking back on my life and realizing there were men that wanted to do that for me, and I rejected them. I don't know what it was. Young man syndrome, right? We all got it. Just stupid as shit. Think we know everything. Just absolute fools. F you to everybody in our lives, and a lot of times, and it goes nowhere, man. There's a lot of people. I think for young men, it's finding an older mentor. It's critical, especially. Now, I can't speak for women. I have no idea.
Yeah.
There has to be a movement practice.
Yeah.
You have to address that right away. Even for me, after this recent breakup, is like, I always do the savage shit. What if I slow down? What if it is just a walk? Okay. Then it started to be like I could go in to the weight room because I got into somatic therapy. I was like, well, there's a slant board. I'm just going to constrain myself to using this slant board. Okay, what happens if I just wave my left leg as if I'm being pushed all over the place and kind of just be in that, And then it slowly evolved into more movement, and then it became load again, but I had to learn to take that load, that external stress again. I don't know how anybody gets through life without a journaling practice. I've never seen an elite athlete around, like the ones that are truly elite, not just of like what their ability is on the court, the field, the pool, whatever.
Yep.
not have a journaling practice, some sort of reflective practice. That rings true in every bit of literature you read about elite athletes. As far as having, yes, there you go.
Just
You've got to have that.
yeah.
I mean, that's soul work. That's not just cognitive work. You are drawing out a lot of shit. And when you put it down on that paper, man, it's freeing.
Yeah.
So even if it's a dream, it starts to become a reality. If it's a darkness, you start to be able to speak to that darkness. And that's where that improv and that role playing comes in. It's like, okay, I'll shout him out here, like Art of Coaching, Brett Bartholomew, friend of mine. He doesn't know this, but sometimes I write as if he's talking to me. Like, what advice would Brett give me? Or Dr. Katsinas, one of my professor friends at UA, 67-year-old man, like, how would he speak to me in this moment? You know? Because I have them and they've given me a lot of gifts, and I don't always have to call them. I can just think about what they would say, you know? So yeah, community, journaling, movement, and then it's about finding your blueprint, you know? But I don't have your blueprint. I can guide you to it, and then you got to go,
Mm.
you know?
Yeah.
And if you stay on with me and want to pay me more money, cool. That's great. I love that. I need money. We all do. But, you know, I'd rather give you self-agency to explore on your own again,
Yeah.
you know?
What does that look like then? Because maybe this is where I get a little bit more excited, and we've kind of lightly talked about this maybe in the last podcast, but it's so hard to individualize, programming for a big team, especially if you're in like the collegiate scene. And like how you're even talking right now, it's like, if someone's going through something, stepping back, like you just said, to even like a walk, you don't even notice like going through really hard times like that just destroys like your whole central nervous system just gets a shock, like aggressively. And like, some boo-boo workout, you walk out and you're like, everything hurts. I'm sore. I can't recover from stuff. You're like, what is going on? You're in a different space then now, because now you can program individually. So what does that kind of building of self-agency and maybe like understanding the self for you when you're programming someone look like?
Yeah, it's kind of what I'm working through right now. Is like, what does a curriculum look like? You know? And I think about like, what have I done in the past with a large group of students? And I'll just say like, there was never a multiple choice test in my class unless someone forced that on me. And my kids would be like, where's the rubric? I'm like, when you've been thorough. They're like, what does that mean? I was like, I know what your abilities are, and whenever you hit that, good. And if you don't, I'll be like, please redo this. You don't get third, fourth chances in life usually, but I would give you that. And I think, for me, it was always based around writing, like truly finding your voice through your writing. I would tell my inner city kids that a lot. It's like, if you can't communicate what you want and you need, I have no idea how you're going to make it through this world. And I think that's the biggest thing for me, is like helping someone find their voice and to be able to be vulnerable and open up. And if I'm coaching you, my conversations with my athletes may touch on programming as far as like speed, strength, power, all that shit, because it's important, supposedly. I love it. I absolutely love it. But it rarely touches on that, man. And I have one that found out he was bipolar this year. So the conversation isn't about, he ballooned up in weight. He was living in a totally different body. So it's always going to be centered around that kind of stuff. It's like your lifestyle, your habits, how you're speaking to yourself, I don't know how to help someone find their own spiritual path yet.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if that is the direction I'm supposed to carry someone, but I can live that way and talk to them about what I'm experiencing.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like that piece is maybe that's what my coach has done so well. And eventually I'm going to get him on. He's very busy right now. But my coach was such a good mentor in that way. It was never like forcefully telling me. And maybe this is kind of what you do in your training, is it's more about the feedback, kind of just listening to what you just said, is the feedback and the conversations that you end up having with your
Yeah.
clients and your athletes. But was never forced into an ideology. He always just showed me how he did things by doing it himself, being,
Yeah.
the best example himself. And then again, providing possibilities for me to open into that journey. So like providing me, maybe you could read this book if you're interested. Look at this.
Yeah.
And so that was a big piece for me, was like learn.
I
And
tried to do that with some. I was like, please read this book. And
yeah, yeah,
they're not reading that book. And then some absolutely do.
yeah,
Go all in, and that's it, and you have to adapt to that. But what you just said about your coach, that's my father.
yep,
Come to him a lot of shit in my life. Now, obviously, he's had strokes now, and I don't get to have these conversations.
yeah,
But that's what he did. I said, well, I don't necessarily, I can't, navigate this life for you. I'm not going to be able to make this choice. No one else is coming to save you. But he asked great questions. He just posed the question, get me to think a little bit differently about things,
yeah,
you know. And that was always just the direction I truly needed. Was I am like crazily chasing freedom, and independence. And I've always been a little bit of fuck the man kind of guy, I don't want to be aggressive with that though. It's just like, I've got friends all over my ass for finishing my PhD. It's like, that's not where I am right now.
mm,
You know, I got other things I'm deeply interested and fascinated in. That's where my mind wants to go. And I think that's a big part of it for my athletes or just anybody that works with me. It's like, part of the lessons are, what are you allowing in? What are you affording space for? It's like a boundary isn't a cutting off, it's just an affordance of space. And to get them to truly like hone in on what brings them life and love. They can do that, man. That's
yeah,
a superpower.
yeah,
As far as those coaches that make athletes train through severe pain and hurt, trauma, I feel for them. I don't know that those coaches have found anything soulful in their lives, and they're trying to obviously prove their worth so that they can continue to get paid. And I think that sucks. As like being in the public sector, college and pro sector, it's like maybe sometimes you do need to just shut them down completely, but that doesn't look good.
yeah,
you know?
yeah, yeah. Because I was trying to like boil it down to, if there's a coach starting, and I'll even take myself as an example, because again, I look to you as a mentor in this programming space and watching the movements that you do, right? You will program things to where you'll even explain like, I'm feeling through this movement. It's not even, I didn't see a rep range. I didn't see, hey, do this, this, or this. It's like you were just
Yeah.
feeling slowly, eccentrically through this movement, what is going on. And I think that's where my mind starts to kind of like get excited, because it's like you are truly having someone explore, and yourself, which is even better, explore these movements and understand them.
Yeah, Brandon. I mean, the hardest thing about what I do is I have to put sets and reps and weight ranges and all that shit.
Yeah.
I think it's absolutely ridiculous. I know that we don't want to like touch on like consciousness and stuff, and we're not exactly sure where it lives. And there's a lot of new research coming out with like near death experiences on all that, right? And like the
Mm,
metaphysical side of things. Example, I'm getting back into running. I ran 2 400s before I hit tempo 200s. Why would I do that? Because there's a lot of people who say this is stupid. It was a psychological advantage for me. That's all I was creating. I was like, do the 400s, suffer. 200s make me feel hellaciously better. It's like that actually feels freeing now. You know, but yeah, I think that's the hardest part about what we do is I have to prescribe these rep ranges and stuff. It's like take a similar athlete, some are just going to respond better to a higher rep range with, maybe it's 6 reps at 80%. Some of my athletes are going to gravitate to 3 reps at 92%.
Yeah.
That stuff doesn't necessarily matter to me as much, I want them to have a feeling. It's a sensory experience, Are you in tune? What's your inner voice saying to you right now in this moment? I have a visualization practice before every big lift. Like, I visualize failing twice, all the catastrophe that could happen. I see the success 2 to 3 times, and then I repeat to myself, it's already been done. And that's, I think, such a powerful tool to give people. Yeah. The thing is, when I do that and I'm truly present, I get that lift every single time. That's how I get those big Zercher squats.
Yeah, because it's interesting too, because you look at, again, if we were looking at like the CSCS, for example, or like this way of teaching, it's very interesting looking outwards from that. Because, they kind of give you this blanket statement of the rep ranges here, give you this certain stimulus if you're looking for muscular hypertrophy or, muscular endurance, rather.
Philippines chart, just right there.
Yeah.
This is it.
Yeah. Not just like, again, though, it's like, I feel like, again, talking to strength coaches that have been in the field for so long, and you can still get a hypertrophic stimulus, if we're going to go with that, with a way lower rep range, just going for 90%. Like, you still can get that muscle hypertrophy. So it's like, even the evidence that they have provided is still, it's washy, and it's kind of hard to sit with.
Are you recruiting high threshold motor units or not? It's like, that's what the body responds to. And I think I'm all for movement variance for a great reason, right? That's the playful part of it. That's the skill acquisition part of it. And I talked about that recently. It's like, there's a phenomena that happens when you become obsessed with skill that I don't even know if it's ineffable. I don't know how to describe that.
Yeah.
Well, you see it when it hits. Yeah. Yoakum's great at that, right? With his athletes. That's the buy-in. It's like, I'm a skill-obsessed athlete now. But you could keep it as simple as you want to with just bilateral loads, and it would do the job.
Yeah.
I find the hypertrophy is interesting, man. For my body, it responds really well with compound movements to low rep ranges. For most of my athletes, it's the same way. We can get jacked out of our skulls. Jake Toura's hypertrophy cluster style stuff, right? He's not the first one to do it, but that's what you do. But then with the single joint actions, I'm trying to heal tendon and ligament while also developing. And, my body responds exceptionally well to that. Most people's do as well, you know?
Yeah. So it's been interesting. Again, like, even watching someone I've been ingesting a lot of his content is like Will Rattel.
Yeah, he's the best, man. He's so great.
He's the shit. And I love watching it because I don't know, I feel like I watch his programming, and maybe you can speak into this. I'll watch his programming, and then I'll watch another coach's that's very, we'll just call it CSCS, just as a blanket statement. It's probably not that fair to say that, but Will's is just so obvious to what's happening. It's very simple. It's to the point. I can understand instantaneously. I see what he's trying to do. I see what he's trying to build towards. And then I watch these other ones, and you're watching the most intricate programming with this or that. And I'm like, like, again, and he always pushes, like, if you're not providing a stimulus, if you're taking, I don't know, if you're taking a balloon with water in it and you're doing some Russian twists, like, what are you really doing? Like, are you just like lubricating the joints?
It's kind of the WEC method stuff where it's like, all right, there's such like a little, mid-range load here. It's like, wouldn't the athlete be better just playing fucking pickleball?
Yeah.
Like all that royal coil like action and stuff. It's like pickleball. Can we just get them doing that? Because they're going to smash and like all this stuff and torque, rotate, all those things. And Will, it's just, I think probably, he's in his early 30s, and I'm in my late 30s, and I think we both arrived at a similar place at around the same time where it was like I could just set a 13-minute timer and tell myself I have to get this many reps, or I need to, whenever you work with me, it's like we're trying to just work towards a sensation. It's like, was that savage enough yet? Yeah. All right, done.
Yep.
But giving yourself that time, and I think Evie, Calderon, that I highlight a lot, she's working off of his program, and we all love this idea of just set a timer and just go for it.
Yeah.
And after that timer's up, it's time to move on. I think it keeps it really interesting. It allows for a lot of exploration, even within a simple pattern. You're just fucking around and finding out. You might load it too heavy. Well, I still got time.
Yeah.
I still got time, and I got to hit this shit because I didn't get it,
Yeah.
Yeah, Will's the best, man. I think he does an incredible job with this 2 minute, like super fast, like this is how it is.
Yeah.
Tutorials on YouTube. And, I think he's most essential to the field to kind of brush away some of the nonsense that's out there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
because again, I'm thinking I'm still taking a lot of this information from my perspective as an athlete. So like, how would I implement this into my training? And so, if I was getting a warm up that's like frou-frou, and like now I'm watching it, I'm like, if it's producing nothing and you're just having me move, like again, like you talk about and you lean into, it's like, let me just play for 10, 15 minutes and warm up. Like I'll get my potentiation that way. I'll do your whole ramp protocol. Like it doesn't make sense anymore. Like let's walk this back, like if I'm about to deadlift, at least just let me fucking deadlift to warm up. Like it's too much shit, And so you're just overloading the system. And so then you go to your practice, your sports specific training, right? That's the most important thing here. That's why we're here. And it starts to get poked on. Even if you're like, I'm not necessarily fatigued, if things are starting to be affected over time, then you actually do need to walk back and look at all of these steps that we're utilizing, and we're missing things because there's too much. And that's why I like his programs. I look at that, I'm like, it's genius. It makes too much sense. That's the problem.
Yeah. Yeah, you go in with the idea of 4 to 6 movements. And, and that's, I think, really important for all of us to remember. That are programming for people that are not, especially men like me, Lucas, Hardy, like all these guys. Like, I have a tremendous skill set. I've probably forgotten more than most people will ever learn in terms of like strength efforts. That's not like a flex. It's just because I dove in too deep into so many different directions, including knees over toes.
Yeah.
And you arrive at a place, it's like, man, so much of what I've done in the past is truly excessive volume with load. Why wasn't I just playing sport? A lot of people don't want to play by themselves. That's part of the issue. A lot of people don't want to play in general.
Yeah.
It's like if I go in and hit a set, let's say I've got a leg day, it's like, all right, I'm going to go hit leg curls, leg extensions, calf raises. One set of 20, get a little pump, make it hard. Now I've got a soccer ball and a basketball. I'm going to play with that until I don't want to anymore, and then let's go.
Yeah.
I always find it like great if you can hit a back bend or some cartwheels. For you, other freaky deaky, the most amazing stuff in the world. It's like go tumble a little bit and you're ready, man. You're absolutely ready.
Yeah.
If I have 2 athletes, we're playing wall ball. It's something like that. Some type of handball situation. It's great for them.
Yeah. It's even looking at the programming, then if we were going to bring it to a team, like even the, what's it called? Like cat and mouse, like just chasing each other. Like what great sprint training is that? Like that's phenomenal. You don't even have to look at running mechanics or even just giving corrections. It's like, let him run as fast as humanly possible. Things will start to weed out itself. Like he's going to have to learn how to run faster regardless. And yeah, sure, you could probably poke at little things, but I feel like the overall, and maybe you could talk about that because I feel like that's been brought up a few times, but the cues, when you're cueing an athlete, how that could actually start to convolute things.
Yeah, Will recently talked about it too, if you haven't caught it. But I was talking to Hunter, my buddy that's in Rome, Georgia, he's sports PT. And I told him, like, I really arrived at a place where, obviously my PhDs in like sport pedagogy and motor learning, all these different things I'm fascinated by. And we say, like, everybody has a different learning style. No, they don't. Not really. Show athlete movement. Watch athlete move. If it makes you cringe, say something. If it doesn't, I know this is like that movement optimism, like you render yourself like obsolete as a coach if you're not willing to give cues. It's like you're missing the point of coaching. It has nothing to do a lot of times with your programming and what you say in a movement. It goes well beyond that. You have to coach every other area of an athlete, their heart, their mind, their soul. It's so fucking simple what we do. Give athlete lunge. You think they can't do that? If it's a severe anterior tilt, fix it. They're just shoving their hips forward. For the most part, it's like all I have to do is show an athlete a movement. And then there's some verbal cues that can exist if I need them to. I don't believe in the language of coaching as far as Nick Winkelman's goes. It's like, pretend a cheetah is running after you. That may work for a 5-year-old, but for you, rather ridiculous. It's like Will was talking about with the cleans, is like, keep bar close to body.
Yeah.
I had a friend say, never stop shrugging. Greatest cue I've ever heard in my life. Just never stop shrugging. This is immediate. I was like, oh, okay. It's just under the bar.
Yeah.
I think we get a little too obsessed with ourselves in terms of our cueing and forget, I guess it's probably like, you don't have to agree with everything Conscious Coaching says or Brett Bartholomew, but it is a matter of like developing skills outside of just coaching patterns, and then it is asking questions of the body. All right. It's more so allowing the space for them to move. Where did you feel it? A very simple question to ask. A lot of people are not prepared to answer. So they go back into the set. They're like, oh, okay. All right. And then we start to discover what's really going on in there. Yeah. Well, I don't feel like this is actually working. Okay. Maybe it's not for you. It's time to find a new pattern.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting to look at it too. And you can speak on this because you've been in the strength and conditioning field for quite a long time now. But it's like learning, and I've run into this. I've run into this concept in just a little bit of a different way. But learning how to learn, you have to relearn how to learn. And I feel like maybe once you get coaches that are so deep in it, I thankfully I'm just so surface level now that I'm just working my way in. I've been kind of guided towards people that I find very intelligent, such as yourself, Will. Austin's great. Angus is another good one. But like, it's just so funny. Yeah. But so it's just like, leaning towards these people that kind of like push against the grain a little bit, but you guys always seem like you're willing to learn. Again, and maybe this is why I liked Angus a lot too, is like, he even said this because he was kind of critiquing the ATG program, the knees over toes. There's so many beautiful things about that movement. And like, it's not even that he's necessarily shitting on the people, but you look at all of the coaches that post, right? The coaches, but it's just copying and pasting what Ben Patrick said. That's a problem. Because you're not coaching. That's not a coach. And this is what he said, if you have a program written out before you even give it to your athlete, that's a problem. And so it's like learning how to take in information, digest it properly, and then how can I utilize all of these, because there's no bad movements. How can we utilize these movements in a healthy way for this individual?
Yeah.
So how do you feel like you've been in the field for so long? How do you learn again? How would someone kind of walk backwards? Is that just a jab at the ego and say, hey, what does that look like?
When you talk about motor learning, it's really hard. It's really hard to relearn and break down patterns. And we don't have enough time for me to probably touch on like all the different strategies that we can use in motor learning as far as like relearning, especially when you're an older person. For me, somatic therapy, teaching me fear creates holding patterns, right? There's been fear, there's language that I speak to my body, there's things that happened during the time that my hip was destroyed that have left me in a lot of pain. There's not any structural things going on. I have a very hard time pulling from the ground. So I'm having to revisit that. And so it's a tremendous amount of inner dialogue and breath work. Okay, I need to inhale here because I need this hip to externally rotate just that bit more to be able to create the space. As far as like coaches go, most of them don't, it's not their fault, man. They're not engaged in pedagogical practices. Like they're not taught physical education, you know. They learn exercise science. Jack White, Attuned, his degree was in philosophy. There's a reason why people deeply connect with him. You know, he's a better mover than most anybody on the planet. He can do savage stuff, right? But his degree was in something totally different. And it was truly about speaking in a totally different way to the body, right? Through the breath, through the inner dialogue. And I think that's where you've got to get to with these athletes. But a lot of them, they don't understand maybe like their value orientations. Most coaches are disciplinary mastery kind of value orientation, where it's like general in front of the troops, do what I say to do. That works for kindergarten.
Yeah.
At some point, you've got to be able to communicate a little differently. Are they obsessed with the learning process? Do they know how to teach somebody to learn how to learn? Are you asking questions of an athlete? The best soccer coaches I've ever been around, which is an extensive background for me, 3 to 5 minute small-sided games trying to touch on something we wanted to draw out of the athletes, okay? End of the drill, or small-sided games, we didn't really drill. Ask them questions. Okay, were you able to solve that problem? Okay, why? Okay, I'm going to leave now, and I want y'all to talk about how to solve this problem even better. Or, we solved it. Keep that in there. Let's move on to a new set of problems to solve. You know, and that's true learning on the fly, man. Because you're giving the game or the weight room to the athlete for them to explore and play. It always has to be some level of like play-based learning. I don't think anybody's ever going to learn a damn thing if you don't give them that agency to play with it, you know? And I don't fear anybody getting hurt. A lot of coaches, well, that's going to hurt you. I don't give a shit. I don't. Because the likelihood of that happening is minuscule.
Yeah.
That's what I love about Yoakum. He's got him doing crazy stuff, according to a lot of coaches. They don't get hurt. They're just trying stuff, man. They're living in the moment. They don't have time to think about if it's going to hurt them. I love that.
Yeah.
You know? And if you get hurt, we learned. You know, we get to learn a lesson. We'll correct it.
Yeah.
You know, but I'm also not training NFL players and Olympic divers. I have that luxury.
Yeah. I if we're going to walk back then, because I do want to touch on that idea of like play. I don't know if I saw a random video. I forgot what country. I keep wanting to say it's like the Bulgarians or something like that, but they were lifting. It looked like the most fun training session I've ever seen in my life. They're blasting music. They're all doing snatches as heavy as possible. And they're dancing in between. They're having fun. It's like, you can't tell me that's not 10 times more beneficial. Like they're doing one fucking movement. That's it. They're doing one movement and they're all having a blast doing it. Like you don't think the stimulus that they're getting, and even if you look at the overall load, again, if we're going back to like the whole central nervous system, if I'm having fun getting a good stimulus in the weight room, I feel like I'm 10 times more likely to go into my sports specific practice and benefit greatly because I just had a lot of fun in the weight room. I'm a little tired, but like I'm light because they were laughing, playing music instead of the do the 3x10 and do what I say. And when it becomes the staff sergeant. And
you know, we talked about it last time I was on. It's just like, I can't, you know, and I think I even describe it as like watch Maradona before a match, you know, watch Ronaldinho before a soccer match. Like I think about these playful athletes. You know, Steve Nash before basketball game, like he's juggling a soccer ball or juggling basketball like it's a soccer ball. It's like there's an element of play and there's this joy and there's a rhythm and there's a dance, there's grace. I talked with one of a former athlete at University of Alabama who's now coaching basketball, and I won't tell the college because to keep it private. She was like, my athletes are powerful. They're fast. They finish top 10 in the country. They have no rhythm. She's like, they just don't know. She was trying to describe it as like, I call it grace. It's like, why do we love watching Michael Jordan? He snakes around these opponents with such beautiful grace, right? And it's powerful, but it's beautiful. It's like ballet. It's watching Baryshnikov, right? It's incredible to watch. It's mesmerizing, you know? And I'm not sure if we afford that kind of space a lot, you know? To the point with the snatch, there's nothing more fun than learning that kind of skill.
Yeah.
I think it's amazing because you have to be so in tune, you know, and what that does to the brain. But the in-between parts, that's the best stuff, right? Yeah. You know, you can set up all sorts of things for these athletes to do between sets so they can feel more playful, more graceful, lighter, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny too, because I've been utilizing pretty large rest times in between, like we'll call it a deadlift. And I've noticed if I sit, so if I've been given 4 minutes to sit between my deadlift, and I'm sitting here and I'm doing nothing, I feel 10 times worse versus if you gave me 45 seconds, I'm standing, there's music that I like, we're all talking, I'm not like lifting alone, just kind of like depressed. I feel way more energized, way more rested within those 45 seconds than 4 minutes of sitting on my phone, like staring at the clock, like, what am I doing? Like, this is not like, and then I get to the lift and I feel worse. And so it's like understanding actually that play and the movement of even stimulating the mind to let go and then come back to the deadlift or come back to the lift. It's way more beneficial than I ever recognized.
I think we science ourselves to death sometimes, you know, and I'll tell you, like every single time I do that with my programming, I forget the soul of the human being that I'm training a little bit. I haven't forgotten it altogether, but I forget there's a person there. And it leaves me cold, and I know they're not necessarily enjoying it either. You know? I don't know that there's, again, like we don't understand human consciousness. There's no, we don't have enough science to understand that. So, you know, celebrating that, which I do, and then trying to insert that in programming, you know, is a beautiful craft, and it's an art, and it's a philosophy, it's a guiding philosophy, but it's not necessarily a blueprint or a curriculum that I can put on a piece of paper. You know, it's a feeling, it's a conversation, you know, and I find that to be, you know, probably the greatest challenge of a lifetime with my career, right? Is being, I mean, I'm hoping maybe we find out a little bit more about these things, but yeah, science ourselves to death, 4 minute rest periods. Every 10 meters you run is a minute you have to rest. It's like, who's going to fall in love with that? I'm not sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, I post Ashton, my cyclist, the 6'4" kid that loves the Olympic lift. If you ask him to rest 4 minutes, he's going to want to punch you in the face, man. Like, it's just not, you know, it's like putting me at a swimming pool, you know, for a pool day. I'm too much of a spaz, man. I'm like, all right, what's next? Are we like cannonball party? Like, what's going on? You know, we got to do stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. It's that art of understanding the person in my mind, like understanding myself in that situation of those 4 minutes sitting there. I'm like, this just doesn't make sense for me. And I don't know if that's because, he's like an ADD, he just needs to keep going, but I can understand a 2 to 3 minute rest break, but like some interset stretching to work on my mobility, which has done, you know, just unbelievable things for me. That was thanks to Thomas Kurtz, his book, Stretching Scientifically, which was pretty beneficial for me in like intertwining those things. But like, again, it's it's understanding how we can build those things and intertwine them with the play and it's just so hard because again, like I'm still in the university system, not literally, but I have to lift at Purdue's weight room. So I get to watch all of this. And it's hard to watch some of these programs and just, you have the athletes just trying to let me get through every single movement because I can't stand what I'm doing. So thank God it's only 3x8. I'm going to crank through this. And like, even within that scenario, there's so much overload that the coach doesn't even look at the rest times. So you're like, oh, well, sure. Like you're just going a bad way in the other direction, So I feel like trying to find that happy medium is interesting for me to see at least.
Yeah, it must be tough. I mean, I've done it before, obviously, with large groups of athletes, 60, 70, 80 people in a space. And, I will say it's tough. This is not that you can't get people locked into this intense intention about what you're doing, and give them like, I think whenever you think about your programming, it's like, am I giving them a gift or not? Is this going to be a gift to their body where it makes sense? Like you said with Will Rattel's, it's like, it's obvious right away that this absolutely dynamic correspondence and all that. It's like, this is probably going to make me dope at what I want to do. And with the ramp protocols and all these other things that kind of leave athletes cold, it's like, I don't know, and they're not feeling it anymore. But I think it's, a matter of just finding that ability to create that intensity, man, in every single lift, and whatever that looks like. Depending, football players are great at that. You hit a football weight room, like it's fucking intense. Yeah. You get basketball players in the weight room, they're like, bro, a lot of times it's like, I know I'm stereotyping, but it's kind of like that.
Yeah.
Soccer players do the same way. Yeah. So it's interesting to like find the right lifts for, each different type of team, and, working within that. That's a constraint in and of itself. It's just the mentality of the athlete.
Yeah. I will say I've seen a couple of, I'll call it generations of Purdue basketball players, and every single team that comes in, I've never seen just so many athletes just have a lot of fun while they're lifting. They have a great fucking time, like singing, just depending on the song that's on, I'm laughing my ass off in the corner because they're having a great time. Like it's cool. Even seeing the wrestlers, they like to go as psychotically heavy and hard as possible. Let them do it then. And they go nuts. I've been able to watch, again, generations of wrestlers, and they just go hard and they love it. And they're screaming the whole time. Lightweight, baby! You hear that the whole time. You're like, yeah, let's go. Let them go nuts.
Create that heavy metal experience, man.
Yeah. And it is funny to watch the coach lean into that. Yep. Just go, like load the groups that go into it. Or if the basketball team likes to lean into the rhythm of the music, then like turn up the music, let them go nuts. Like they'll lift better, they move better. And especially seeing those big dudes, the 7-footers try to move, it's hilarious, but they get poked at. Come on. It's like, it's just so good to watch that like culture get built up. So I couldn't agree more with that. I do want to bring it back to you though. You were talking about maybe moving or trying to go abroad with the Wayfinder and, find a path. What's that look like?
Yeah. You talk about like getting connected to your soul, and I've got an opportunity that may arise that'll keep me in the States. That would be a good opportunity for me to explore. But for years, I mean, it's called out to travel through the world. I obsess over learning about culture. A lot of people will travel so they can take pictures of their food and, do the yoga pose in front of the Buddhist temple.
Yeah.
I'm fascinated by people and how they live. I've always wanted to be in I love sporting cultures. I love physical cultures. I got an opportunity to live in South Africa for a while. Right? It was such a physical culture there. You know, people trained hard. You had to play a sport or you had to dance, right? You know, I'm at their prom, man. Every single kid knew how to do some like Beauty and the Beast, like twirling around. Like, what? I was like, what the fuck is this? Meanwhile, back in America, we're just humping each other to death on the
Yeah.
dance floor, you know?
Yeah.
But I loved that physical culture. And they also had a way of like you talked about community. It was like, man, we would have a braai and it's 3 to 4 hours in, and my American stomach is starving, you know, waiting on this food. But that, you know, over time it's like, hey, there's an 8-year-old here and there's a 92-year-old here. And we're all like convening. And so for me, it's chasing like these beautiful experiences with people, you know, and I have no fear in terms of being a stranger or not speaking the language. You know, when I taught in the inner cities, man, I was oftentimes the only white boy in the room. You know, I have no discomfort with that. I've been in a lot of different cultures in that way. So yeah, it's for me, it's going to be like if I'm going to represent wayfinding, it's probably time to start wayfinding around the globe a little bit. Create contents off of that. You know, how is that going to change me? Everything I just told you right now might change. I reserve the right to change my mind. I have no ideological like stance right now. I say it all the time. How the hell are people so convicted? I don't get that, man. Like that's a defiance for me. Like I don't want to stand on conviction. I say controversial shit sometimes. Sometimes I say it to get a rise out of people. I'm usually not necessarily convinced by my argument. And that's what I'm chasing, man. It's just like other ways of thinking, other ways of doing and moving and living, you know? And I've always wanted to live in a footballing culture where people just go absolutely bananas over their local soccer team, you know, like Seville, you know, like go to Real Betis and watch a match. It'd be sick, right?
Yeah, that'd be wild.
But yeah,
Yeah.
that. I think that's what I'm chasing. People, as I told you, man, it's like not everybody can be an athlete, but everybody craves some level of adventure in their lives.
Yeah.
You know, everybody craves some level of playful exploration in their lives. If they're being totally honest with themselves.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think it's beautiful. Your conviction is not being convicted with any one thing. Like again, we talked about this, but like you might be the ultimate mutt. Like you have taken so many good ideas and training thoughts. Like again, like I actually think I watched something about Will post a video about being convicted, being more convicted what you have behind you. But
Yeah,
I think you lean into the conviction of the truth that you've been able to find within a lot of your training, but
yeah.
holding on to ideologies or jumping into a dogmatic way of thinking, knees behind toe or over, it's like, let's just, like, let's just pause for a second. Like, let's look at this differently. And I think again, that's another thing that I get kind of obsessed with is like, I'm going to watch Will because he's very convicted and he has very solid foundations and he can show you why and how it works. And then I'll come over to you and you do the same thing, but with an open mind and an open, we'll say open soul. And you it's like a healing experience watching your content. And that's why I'm excited, especially when you really jump into the YouTube game. I'm excited for that.
Appreciate that. I don't think me and Will are necessarily different in that way. You know, like people, obviously you know this in more of the YouTube space or like TikTok. People don't do it as much on Instagram. I don't have as big a following anyway, by the way. But usually on YouTube, you'll get like some broed out dude telling you exactly what you've done is wrong, and I find that to be pretty fascinating. It's like there's an intention behind what I just did. I may not have the science to back it up, but there's a real purpose behind what I did, why I programmed this not only for myself but for other people. And a lot of times it's discovery pathways, man. You can call it skill acquisition if you want to, but for me, it's truly a discovery process, right? Trying to figure it out. It's what I like about Grayson Strange, right?
Mm.
He does some weird stuff. People are like, oh, you're going to get hurt. And he's like, maybe, But I'm pretty sure the literature suggests that if I load tissue and I continue to overload that tissue over time, tissue gonna get strong.
Yeah.
You know? And that's kind of that's the guiding principle. It's like, well, I'm safe. I tell myself I'm safe, so therefore I am, and then just roll with it.
Yeah.
You know.
It's wild to see that fear, even in the scientific community, we'll call it, and even within coaches, get so fearful of them. Don't do a deadlift. Don't do a zercher. You're like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Like, wait a minute. What happened to what you learned? Like I even, I had someone reach out to me recently, kind of, not necessarily attacking, but like, hey, watch out for Angus's material. And I paused and I was like,
What?
yeah, like which part? Like I'm confused. I haven't seen anything that he's posted. Like, sure, he's doing Olympic lifting and he's pushing himself. That's good. But like you can get hurt doing anything. You can get hurt even doing yoga. You could hurt running. You could get hurt walking. Like it doesn't make sense to me at some point. Like I think one of the biggest injury sports right now is pickleball. So, you
Yeah,
know,
dude.
yeah,
It's, I think I think a lot of people are afraid of violence in a controlled setting. You know, what is Olympic weightlifting if not the most violent thing I can do with a barbell? Right? That's awesome. Awesome to show that. It's no different than me putting boxing gloves. I'm not a boxing coach. I've had women that I've trained with that didn't know how to express, and I know that I'm stereotyping, but they did know how to express a level of violence that I needed to see in a lift. Put the boxing gloves on, let them go. It's incredible the change that happens like right away where they have this sense of like, actually, you know what? I do have a bit of a lioness in me, man. I'm a savage. I am this dope, you know? No different than like handing the 70-year-old the medicine ball. I don't believe in that necessarily for athletic adaptations, but you're like, you have 30 seconds to throw a ball violently against the wall. So for people to question guys like Angus, you know, and what he's doing is crazy to me.
yeah,
Questioning a Zercher squat. It's the greatest lift on the planet. I will argue that that is a stand. I'm convicted about Zercher.
there it is.
That is a conviction I have. Man, you give somebody a Zercher and they start to develop some sort of savage ass strength off a Zercher squat, you talk about confidence through the friggin' roof. Also, just positionally and what it does, it feels like you're knocking the shit out of somebody the whole time. It's awesome. You know, if you miss that level of competitive, like physical play, put a Zercher squat in your program, man. It's great. There's a
Yeah.
reason why MMA people kind of started using it before everybody else did.
Yeah.
You know, I
Yeah.
love it. I see women in the weight room, they do these goblet squats on slant boards. Like they all have the same program. I'm like, God, I just want to teach them how to Zercher. You know, like, how much more could they get those gains? You know, yesterday I saw 3. It's like they're all in the same program, just goblet squatting. It's like, if I could just put that in your elbows, man, there's no telling where you could go. And that's the discovery process for people.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I love that. I did want to end because I found it interesting your kind of like short spiel on men. And you were
Okay.
specifically talking about, I know this is kind of a complete 180 of what we were just talking about, but you were talking about it was the idea of like telling men to not be toxic, or it's like I think I had it written down, but you probably know it off the top of your head, but it's like
Yeah.
don't be overly cocky, you know?
No, I think the messaging is really strange with men, and we're in a, you know, obviously like these super dichotomous place with general ideologies on the far left, a woke mob kind of thing, and then you have the far right, and you know, there's not a whole lot of people that want to laterally think their way to the gray. You know, there's a lot of black and white thinking. There's a lot of labeling that goes on with men, yet they're obviously they're suicidal, really struggling. And the messaging they receive a lot of times, and you know, I'll just be upfront with you. I've been on dating apps and stuff too, you know, as I've navigated life, and you get this sense that people want this big dick energy.
There it is.
You know, we
Yeah.
talk, it's like, I want that big dick energy in a man. But don't be toxic. It's like, okay, well, the men I know that display like big dick energy kind of have these so-called toxic narcissistic traits. Find it interesting that men are often labeled narcissistic, whereas I've never heard women be labeled that at all. You know, and the messaging gets pretty confusing. It's not very clear. So we say like, be vulnerable, but don't talk too much. And there's a page that I won't name, but like they talk about this a lot. It's like I opened up so much, and in arguments, all of that was like used against me. So now I started to close myself off. You know, this pretty like famous speech of the guy that's in the inner cities talking about that. You know, he's like, I opened myself up, I gave all of this to you, and you used it against me. And I think men are really struggling to understand like what masculinity means.
Mm-hmm.
I was rejected as a young man for displaying like feminine traits, tough and savage as I am. You know, I was also listening to Ani DeFranco and had my hair pulled back in a bun before that was a thing, man. I got called names I can't repeat here. You know, and that outright rejection of like expressing your feminine. You know, and people are afraid of that, especially strong guys, right? So I just find we're in a really weird space with messaging for men. I don't think a lot of us really know exactly how to express it.
Yeah.
Like without being labeled something. We other people a lot. You know, it's very dismissive culture. And I think men are suffering pretty mightily with it.
Yeah.
You know.
And so I guess
It's hard to hear you're toxic if you display aggression.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or intensity, right? Like that's not toxic. It's just part of living.
Yeah.
You know.
So it's you look at that, and again, I listened to that whole speech you kind of gave and explaining, you know, what's been going on. What's your kind of address? What do you do? Maybe even like interpersonally, how do you work through, you know, breaking that culture, breaking the labeling? How do you go about that?
I think it's just learning. You know, if you're talking about just like intrapersonally how I speak to myself, I mean, I trust what's coming up now. You know, I mean, I will say to anybody who's listening to this, somatic therapy is one of the greatest gifts you can give yourself, especially if you're a movement creature like you and I. You know, if you find yourself a good teacher there, you know, you start to truly trust and inhabit a body that is yours and yours alone. You truly trust your soul. And so I don't reject these parts of me. I can fully express. I'll just say like I was told by some really fantastic people to sort of reject my nurturing nature. I'm a teacher. It's a nurturing business, you know, because it would not necessarily leave me financially fulfilled, all these different things. It comes at a cost, obviously. So I kind of rejected that. Well, I lost myself in the process of not allowing that feminine sort of side of me, that nurturing side there. I want to care for people deeply, you know, and then not afraid. I'm not going to be apologetic for expressing aggression and intensity. You talked about anger being a very useful emotion, right? It can be. You got to learn how to direct it. I'm learning how to sit with anger and trust what it's giving me instead of, I used to be scared of it. So I'd like kind of panic. You see red, right? It's like, okay, how is this useful in this moment? Or is it, if you're getting pissed off at your dissertation, not a very good place to like channel your anger. You know, you're getting pissed off at the comments on your Instagram. Jesus. You know, I usually just offer like love. It's like, hey man, you are. And with people, man, I mean, with the men in my life, I think it is just this, I represent opening up. with the fear of being called a vulnerable narcissist always running in the back of my mind.
Yeah.
Just people will do that, you know. Say he's vulnerable narcissist. You know, I just genuinely want to connect.
Yeah.
You
Do you think
know?
that's do you think that's between men opening up that way maybe is probably the best way to start? Because again, it's hard to maybe have a man express his feelings and have a woman be truly empathetic towards that, especially if you are more aggressive natured person. Do you think that's probably the best way to start is to find that community and then to go towards other men that can understand you and like, hey, listen, I wanted to punch or break the fuck out of my lawnmower too. Let's walk it back for a second.
Yeah. No, I think that's a critical thing. That's, you know, I see it rising up. You know, but then there's some men's groups out there. It's like, whoa.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
a lot of people. There's a lot of people out there. It's like, this is how you become an alpha male. And I
Yeah.
said it in my grandfather's eulogy. And if you go back, you'll find it in my Instagram. It's a 13-minute video. And it's the most proud I've ever been of anything I've said because it did not come from here. It was channeled through my soul, man. And it's because my grandfather was that damn exceptional. And I said, bad hombres don't have to tell you how bad they are. And that's what he was, man. That's a bad hombre, dude. But you wouldn't have known it. You know, in a sense, there's like, that dude was a protector. You know, he was nourishing. He was loving. He didn't even have to say anything. You knew if you fucked up, too. But you know, it's like we need to be. I think the most critical thing that is missing from our culture right now is the outright rejection of apprenticeship and a mentorship. I find it cowardly not to share your wealth and wisdom. I think it's the highest form of love in a culture. And because of some of the stuff that's maybe happened in this woke culture, it's like I think older men may be even afraid to like be around younger men for fear of being labeled something gross. You know, and so I don't know that there's a perfect solution to this, but maybe it is just having these conversations. And I do have friends that are leading men's groups where they breathe together and they talk through things together. And if you can't find that, go to AA because there's a lot of men that were fucked up that are willing to talk to you about what's going on in their life, man.
Yeah. There's some real people. I mean, that's like Russell Brand's whole shtick is went to AA and was able to work through it. And what a beautiful human. Just incredible. The stories that you can hear. So yeah, I do love that. It's great advice. Run away from the red pill, but run away from the other side. Find the logic in the middle and you'll be in a better
Yeah.
spot.
Yeah, if you find yourself listening to a guy that talks about being an alpha male, that is not an alpha male. It's not
Yeah.
how we behave.
Yeah.
It's
It's a
weird.
clown. Yeah. It's a clown right there for sure. Well, I'm excited to keep watching your videos. Hopefully you'll start posting a hell of a lot more on YouTube so we can,
Yeah,
you
I'll
know,
try not to disappoint you.
let's go. I'm ready to eat up some knowledge and I'll be posting it on my story as much as humanly possible. So we're here to
Appreciate it.
support. Yeah. Thanks for popping on.
Yeah.
People, thanks for listening and, we'll catch you soon.